guys, welcome to Farm Charm Chic. I'm Emily and I do DIY inspiration on a budget. I would love if you would consider subscribing to my channel so you too can get design inspiration. Today I am doing a collaboration and our theme is a trip to the farmer's market. I'll explain a little bit more about that later, but let's get started. So I have this cute little produce basket and I'm going to put the word market on there with some stain. And when I lift up my stencil, you can see that it bled really bad. So I kind of just take that as a clue that, okay, I'm going to end up staining this basket to kind of cover that up. So I'm going to take my antiquing wax and I alternate between using a paintbrush and a baby wipe. And when I use the paintbrush, I'm kind of pushing it into all those little areas, crevices, everything that you kind of can push the antique wax into. And then I take the baby wipe to smooth it out to kind of make the color a little bit more even. It's also really great for spreading the color in the wider areas that you wouldn't need the brush for. So I'm just going to go around the whole basket and give everything a really good covering in this, and it's just the oh my gosh, I can't say it right. It's just the Waverly antiquing wax is what I'm using here. And I'm going to make sure that the bottom's all covered. I also go back and I make sure that the handle is completely covered and then the lip of the basket. And you'll see that there are lots of little teeny, where the band around the basket is, lots of area that you really do need to push that brush into to get all of the natural wood colors covered up. Then I'm going to take a little bit of a tan color. I believe this is like a cashew color, but any type of lighter color that's going to give it a little bit of an aged look is what I'm going for here. So I didn't want to use something as stark as white, so that's why I went with this more of a tan color. And I'm just taking my little chip brush that I have there and just kind of dabbing it off on my plate first to get the excess off. And then I'm just kind of lightly going over the areas to give it a little bit of a worn and an aged look. So now I'm going to try something different with the stencils. My daughter got these Posca pens for Christmas. They're just like an acrylic paint pen. And this was actually my first time using them, and I'm actually loving how they worked. So I think I may have to invest in some of these, or I know there's some other brands on Amazon that you can get. But what I ended up doing, the first one I just used the Posca pen and I just went right over the stencil itself and traced that letter on with the paint. Then I decide I'm going to do it with a pencil and go back in and trace over my pencil line. That way I'm not having it kind of bleed. I felt like that was going to maybe reduce the chances I had of it bleeding. Hopefully that makes sense, but you can kind of see they worked out really well. I'm actually quite happy with how it turned out. One thing that I do is I go over all of the little metal staple marks with my Posca pen just to kind of make sure, I don't know, I thought it kind of looked nice to have those covered up in the black. Kind of gave it a little bit more of an aged look, if you will. And then I also went over my letters with that tan colored paint to kind of make them look like they were worn and faded. I love how this turned out. It would be so fun to also stack a little bit of artificial fruit in there. This is something that is definitely reminiscent of a farmer's market. What do you guys think of this one? As I mentioned earlier, today's video is part of a collaboration that I'm doing with Amber from Amber XO and Missy from Hey Y'all Let's DIY. Our theme for the collaboration today was a trip to your local farmer's market. So all of our DIYs are inspired by our farmer's markets. You need to go check these ladies out. They are amazing. I'm going to put a link to both of their channels in my description box. Make sure you say hi to both of them when you do go watch their videos. I know you're going to love what they've done. So I found these cute little spindles on Amazon, and I got thinking this would be kind of fun to make carrots out of, just kind of do a little bit of a different take. I know carrots are super popular right now, and so I just thought, this could be kind of fun to do. So what I'm going to do is use a true orange, and then I have a little bit of a tan or stone color that I mix with the orange to do a second one, and then I have my Merlot color there that I use on my third one. We grow so many different varieties of carrots every year that all have such different vibrant colors. So that was kind of what I was going for here. And also that's one of the things I absolutely love about visiting farmers markets is to see the different varieties of all the different produce that they have, things that you maybe wouldn't see on a regular basis. It's so fun to see all of the different colors and things like that. So that was my intent of what I was going for with these different colors. So now that I've got my carrots painted, I've got to give them a little bit of foliage on the end. So in my stash, I have these sprigs of eucalyptus that I'm using, and I just cut them down to the size that I wanted them to be. And I'm going to put a little bit of hot glue and then just glue the stems down. I do 2 on each side of the carrot. And then after they're secured down, I'm going to take some jute twine and I'm just going to glue one end of it down. And then I just kind of wind it up completely so that way it hides the whole stem of the eucalyptus sprig. And it just kind of gives it a nice little rustic feel to it. It's also going to secure those on to hold them. I actually will go up over the end of the carrot and wind the jute twine very tight around the foliage itself. That way it kind of pulls those two together, and so there's not a really big gap between them. It gives it a little bit more of a natural look. I'm really excited to use these carrots in my decorating. I think there's something that you could separate and use individually. You can tie them together as a bundle and use them all sorts of different places. I'm loving the pops of orange that I'm getting from the carrots in my spring decorating. Let me know down in the comments if you guys have started decorating all with carrots since they've become so popular. Here's a look at how they look all done. I did tie them together for right now. I love how they turned out. You can kind of see really close up how the jute twine tied around the foliage looks right there. I think that's a great touch to do. And I think these turned out so wonderful. Definitely reminiscent of a farmer's market. So I have these darling little jars that I got at Dollar Tree. They say homemade on the front of them. And I'm just showing you here that you can actually take just a regular mason jar lid and insert it into the ring, and it will fit perfectly. So I'm gonna do 2 of these, and the first one I paint just with white chalk paint, and the second one I'm gonna spray paint, and I'll show you the difference between the two, and you can kind of see if there's a style that you like. I just love how when you go to the farmers markets, there's usually somebody there that's selling something. They've made some wonderful kind of lotion that comes in a cute little jar that they've maybe grown like their own stuff. They've, lavender that they've infused it with, or you find the places that have like little the honey in the little pots, or their jams or jellies in the little jars. And so that's kind of what I was going for with these little jars. Is I just love those little stands that you find that are selling those locally homemade things. So I give the jar a really good coat, and then I give it another second coat, and I believe I maybe even went back and did a third coat. So with the second jar, I'm just going to take all the stickers and everything off, and I'm going to get my painter's tape, and I'm going to tape around the ring. I didn't want the paint to be around the rim of the jar, because I wanted that lid to be able to go on smooth and not have to get stuck or tear any. You can't tear paint, but you know what I mean, like rub off any of the paint. Anyway, so and then I just cover the whole top of it, so that way when I spray it, none of the spray paint will go inside. So I just use Krylon's Chalky Finish and give the jar 2 coats of spray paint. So now I'm taking the jar that I hand painted with chalk paint, and I'm going to distress it. The jar has these raised letters that say homemade, and then there's also, you can see little ridges that are raised all around the jar. So I just take some sandpaper and I go over the letters to make sure that they stand out. And then I also will take it and go along some of the edges and those little raised lines throughout the jar, just to give it a distressed look. I love distressing things. It's completely up to you whether that's a style that you like or not. I just distress everything. So of course that's what I'm gonna do. And I just kind of go through, and some areas I really focus on and give it, a really worn look, and then some areas not so much. So I do go back in with a little bit of chalk paint and kind of maybe lessen a little areas. I might have gotten a little too carried away with the distressing. That does not happen to me very often, but I just wanted you to know that you can go back in if you do a little too much and kind of cover it up. And then I just take one of these cute little sprigs of flowers from Dollar Tree. You always find such fun flowers at the farmer's market. So I kind of just turn that one into a little planter. So this is the one I spray painted, and you can see the difference here between the two. You definitely get a smoother finish with the spray paint, so it just kind of depends on what your style or what you're going for is. So I'm going to take this cute little cherry fabric, and I'm going to just cut a square just larger than the size of the lid. This is kind of just being reminiscent of cute little jars of jams or jellies that you might get at the farmer's market. And I take one of my Hobby Lobby grocery sacks here, and I just kind of make a little size, this the size of the lid, and I'm going to put the fabric over it. It's going to give it kind of that raised, poofy little look. I don't know, I've seen these on jars of jams and jellies or honey before. So I decided to turn the edges in. That way you don't see them hanging over the edge. If I had some cute little like pinking shears or something, then you could probably cut a really cute edge on the fabric. So I do take a little bit of mineral chalk paint and go in to distress rather than to sand this one. And I do just want to say that this is not my favorite with how it turned out for this project. I do like doing this, but with this particular project, I wish I had just sanded it. But I do want to just kind of give you a little bit of inspiration and show you a different way of distressing here. So And here's a look at both of them side by side. You can kind of get a close-up look. This is the one that I hand painted with Waverly's chalk paint, and this is the one that I spray painted with Krylon's chalk paint. So what do you guys think of these? I just think they turned out really cute and just kind of fun to sit on a shelf. Don't forget that I'm on Instagram also. I love to meet new Insta friends, so I would love for you to come over and say hi, check out my page, and see all the latest projects that I'm working on. I'll be sure and leave a link down in my description box so you can easily find me. So I had this really cute sign that I bought last summer at Hobby Lobby's clearance, and I just kept thinking that I would come up with the right project for it, and this is probably my favorite project of everything today. So I try to sand these letters off with just some sandpaper, and that's not working. So I have to go get my big sander out, and you guys, it's so hard to hold your phone and record and sand at the same time, so I apologize for the jumpiness. Okay, so I get this file from Silhouette's design studio. I actually own a Cricut and have never purchased an SVG file from Silhouette, but they have some amazing things and you can transfer them in to your Cricut design space to use. So that's what I did with this. And then I'm going to just make this a stencil. So that's why I pulled out the letters first. So I'm going to end up stenciling this onto the side to kind of give it a hand painted look. I love buying honey at the farmer's market. It's probably one of my favorite things. We actually tried to keep bees one year and it was the most amazing thing. And I would love to get back to the point where we could. Our queen ended up dying and we lost our whole hive. It was actually quite traumatic, but I love honey and the different flavors you get from the different areas that bees use to pollinate and everything. So I'm just going to take my chalk paint and pounce the paint onto the open spaces of the stencil. There are lots of different precautions and measures you can take to not have your stencil bleed. However, I was okay if it did because I wanted this to look homemade. I wanted it to look like the honey vendor just kind of put this sign together and they've used it year after year. And so I wanted it to have a very rustic, very homemade look, I guess is what I'm trying to say. The B at the top you can see kind of got ruined in the transfer, and also the word raw, the W on that kind of got a little bit messed up. So I do go back in and recut those. So don't worry about those. So I just go through and I lightly pounce that paint onto all the spots that I want it the paint to go in. Obviously those two spots I told you about I'm not doing right now. I do take my hair dryer and dry this before I peel the stencil off to make sure that I don't smudge anything. And then I'm just going to lightly peel the stencil slowly. Take your time doing this because I mean it is kind of a delicate process, so this is definitely sped up to like 3 or 4 times. So just take your time, and then you're going to go back in and peel like how the O is. You're going to peel the center part out of that and get all of those little areas taken off. And then I'm going to go back in and redo my B and then that other word that I was missing. Now my sign is pretty distressed itself from when I used my big sander, but this is one of the benefits of using it as a stencil and painting your design onto your surface is because you can go in and distress the paint. I've seen people with vinyl go over it with paint and everything to kind of give it a distressed look, but I really wanted this to have that very aged look. I am so excited to hang this in my kitchen for everyone to see. It turned out better than I thought that it would, and I love that I just took some little boring Hobby Lobby sign that was on clearance that meant nothing to me, the saying on it, and I took it and made it into something that I absolutely love. So I have these really cute signs from Dollar Tree, and I've seen where you're able to stick two signs together to make one big surface, so I'm gonna try that. So I go ahead and get all of the staples and everything removed and then kind of position them. Now I do put these popsicle sticks down, but then realize that I need to punch some holes in the boards, so I do have to end up taking them off. But I realize when I take them off that paper is peeling right off of those signs. So I actually end up gluing a bunch more sticks down and peeling up the paper. I then line these baskets up and kind of draw marks of where I need to punch some holes in the board. And then I go back and clear all of the hot glue off that kind of seeped in the middle. I then use my tool that's called a crocodile and I go cut holes where I'm going to wire those baskets on. And then what I'm going to do, I just use a little emery board to file the center so I can set these two signs together. And then I can actually glue my popsicle sticks down in a way. And I want to make sure that I'm not covering the holes that I need access to. So I then go in with a little bit of spackling and kind of cover up the crease so that way it looks a little bit more cohesive as one sign. I spray the baskets with a matte black paint, and somehow I also lost the footage of me painting my sign, but I do paint it white, and I cut out on my Cricut this little decal. And of course, as I'm pulling back my paper, it rips off the paint where the spackling was. So I'm not sure it was actually worth it for me to spackle because that's the only place that the transfer paper peeled that up. So I line the baskets up and then I use zip ties and I go ahead and zip tie each basket on and then just secure it in the back so those baskets are on there for good. Then I go in with just some black paint and I'm going to give this an enameled look, and I also want it to look more like chipped enamel, so like it's been worn. So I go around all the edges and then I also go in and add some areas where it's going to look chipped. I felt like where the spackling was and you could see the spackling and those imperfections that occurred there. I felt like this was a good way to kind of make it look intentional, make it look aged. So that's my decision with what I decided to do here. I love when you go to the farmer's market and see all the fun ways that the vendors have their booth set up and the displays they use to display all their fun produce or their goods that they're selling. So that was my inspiration behind this piece. So I do take a 5-gallon paint stick and staple some ribbon to it, and then I staple the ribbon back on the back, and then those popsicle sticks kind of work as a stand, so that way I can prop it up and stand it. I think I may go back and just staple a piece of twine onto the back to hang it on the wall. But here's a look at it all done. I think it turned out super cute and super fun. I'm kind of excited to get to style this with the different seasons and put all sorts of fun things in it. I hope that you guys have enjoyed watching my interpretation of a trip to the farmer's market. Remember to check in the description box below the link to Amber and Missy's videos so you can see their interpretation of a trip to the farmer's market. Remember to like and subscribe. You guys are awesome. Have an amazing day.